Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Islamic Finance, show where we are discussing about Islamic perspective on money and wealth. From the last time, we had one little exercise which we were doing. We were discussing money and the reality of money. If you remember last time, we were talking about how much money is used between different countries when they trade between each other. So for example, you want to sell some grains from Egypt, you want to sell it to Qatar, or you want to buy some petrol or gas from Qatar here, then you know, the different currency, you want to buy some Japanese car, maybe you want to buy iPad from whatever place. So as this trade takes place, people need to exchange money for the other currency in order to execute this trade. When you look at the whole world, every given day, about $100 billion worth of money is needed to facilitate for this trade. So if we put $100 billion, $100 billion is needed, is there then a reason to exchange on daily basis more than 100 billion on the foreign exchange where money is exchanged? Is there a reason to exchange more?
There's no reason there's no reason because we're using that amount and we'll work within that.
So we have a number of goods which are about, let's say, 100 billion, and we really need that much money to help us facilitate the trade. Now, if I tell you that number that actually gets changed every day is more, would that make sense?
No, it wouldn't make
That doesn't make sense. How much more do you think is, if I say 200 billion was exchanged today, for instance, is that a lot more? What is this extra 100?
It's commodity, like actual items and stuff.
It's
like
actually just the money for money transaction. So you, for example, dollar for euro, you know, euro for yen, and so on. It's just money between themselves circulating, exchanging. There's no real commodity, nothing, just to facilitate this trade. So if it is 200 billion, what is this extra 100 billion? This is what we call speculators who are entering the markets. So you have these people who have their little computers, little screens, and they don't really want to buy anything with that money. What they're doing is they're buying and selling money, trying to speculate on the price movement, or what we call a gambling with the charts, and profit from that. So in reality, they are not doing or adding any real value. They're not exchanging money for the sake of buying, but they are speculating, and therefore the excess from what is normally seen is driven by speculators. Now, if I tell you that this is not just 200 billion, it's more than 500 billion, would you be surprised?
Yes.
Of course.
Okay, what if I told you it's more than that? It's more than 100 billion, 1,000 billion every single day. What if I told you it's about 3,000 billion every single day? Yet it's only about 100 really needed. And it's more than 3,000, more than 3 trillion every single day. What is this all? So 90% of these whole transactions, more than 90, I don't know what's the, more than 90% is what? It's based on speculation. Speculation on this foreign exchange market. Okay, so we will look at this issue of speculation when we talk about some of the prohibitions and so on. But this becomes then as a gambling. Okay, people just buying and quickly they're trying to profit from the price difference. And we'll see Islamically, is this something that makes sense to do, and what are the rules? Okay, so historically then, if you look at the historically what used to be money, what are some of the things that you know? We talk about gold and silver. What some other things you know as a money?
For example, grains.
Yeah?
Greens.
Yep. Anything else?
What
sort of grains?
We would
Rice
use
grains.
the rice grains.
Rice,
corn.
corn. Anything else?
They would use small, like arrowheads.
Yeah, yeah. All of these different things at one point in time, they would be considered as money. People would use them. There was an interesting story I found. There is a people, they call it people in one of these countries, they would have stones which they would carve and use as money. So this was the money of Yap. It is known as Rai. And this stone, it was just a block, big block, stone block from the mountain, and they would work very hard, and they're very heavy, maybe a ton. And people would consider that as the money. So what they used to do, they would bring a group of people, they would take the, make this piece of block, stone block, and they would put it somewhere in the square, in the village. And then they would assign ownership to a particular person. So they would say, okay, you now, it's your thing. You are the guy who owned this. So we would all know you owe that stone. When you want to go buy a house from him, you would say, give me your house, and this stone is now yours. Okay, so the ownership of the house goes to you, and you are buying the house. So now he owns that stone. This was used as a money in that village. On one of the trips, when they were going to get these stones from nearby villages, what happened? Their ship, their boat, sank in the ocean, and the stone went down. Okay, so now they are transporting this. So this is the ocean. Okay, all right. So they're having all of these things. It collapsed. It went down in the ocean. Okay, now it's sitting there in the ocean with the fish, swimming. Fish are swimming, and it's in the ocean. Okay, all right. So these people say, okay, well, we lost it. We lost the wealth. It's in the ocean now. What we can do? It collapsed. So some of these bankers of the time, they say, no, it's not lost. He said, what do you mean? He says, we still know it's in the ocean. So what we're going to say is, that stone that is now in the ocean, it's yours. We will still use it. So like we use the other stones, it's stone in the village, we will now make a reference to the stone that is in the sea. And they agree. They said, fine. And usually when I tell this story, people find how stupid these people must be to do something like that.
It's the same in today's time.
Same in today's times. At least these people had a stone in the ocean somewhere to refer. Where is your money referring to? Nothing. You wish you had this stone. It would be better for you. So we say then today's money really, because it's not linked to anything, it is really unethical. Yes, it does fulfill certain aspects of money, but you will find that it is really, we could call it unethical money, because allows certain manipulation, and we talked about it last time. But still, rules of riba and other Islamic rules apply on it. Okay. So what are some of the other things? Like we know, Muslims used to use gold dinar before, and silver, and so on. Other people, like for example in Australia, Aboriginals used to use, until even today, shells. So anything of value that they found, they would use. Some other people in the jail, for example, if you look at jails, some people use cigarettes as money. Okay, so I remember in Bosnian War, of course, we know Islamic ruling on cigarettes. It's haram to smoke, it's killing you and all. Okay, so we understand that. But when we were in the war, during the Bosnian War, what do you think we used? Unfortunately, most of the goods that we used to buy, you had to have cigarettes. So even if you don't smoke, you consider it haram. For me to buy something, I had to have cigarette. That was 15, 16 years ago. I had to get a pack of cigarette to exchange. So we used to use, and in fact, soldiers were paying cigarettes. Whether you smoke or not, it was a wealth. So you would get the cigarettes, go on the market and exchange. I remember once my father went on the market, and soldiers. I was with him, and we went to buy something. Soldiers said, "Give us this from your bag." And my father said, "No, shoot us, but we're not going to give you." It was so valuable as a commodity. It was like a gold became. So in different times, people use all things as money that has some value. And at that time, you know, when you think about it now, why would cigarettes have such a value? You know, but this is something that develops within the people. Of course, some other cultures use other things, like we say in Japan, for example, they would use the spears or the tips of the any kind of commodity like rice and so on. And of course, we were mentioning before, in the past, money used to be linked with the real things, with the gold, and we have a paper money of today, which is not linked to anything, but is open to fluctuation and forces of supply and demand. Okay. Now, Islamically, when we look at these things to understand the money, there is a very interesting statement from Hassan al-Basri. He said that money is such a friend of yours which benefits you only when it leaves you. And this is a remarkable statement in itself. And this summarizes really what we want from the money. What is the key function of the money? So if you look at this statement, is there anything that struck your mind? Why can you think about it?
There was a story I remember in the time of the Abbasid Khilafat, when they caught one of the kings towards the ending, and they kept him with his money, and they said to him, "You liked your gold, so eat it," you know. So basically, it just makes me think that if I'm hungry, I can have all the gold I have, but
exactly. So this shows you a reality of what the money is. And we said in Islam, to benefit from money, you must convert it to something that is useful in itself, and then benefit. So money, in fact, really to benefit it, you have to spend it. So when you spend it only, do you get any benefit? And that's why some other scholars used to say that money is a judge between the other things. You see, if I want to buy something, sell, money is there to tell us how much these things are worth. Otherwise, if we go back to barter sale, for example, when we used to, when people sometimes, not always, but they would exchange things. You, for example, have a meat, and he's got grain, and then somebody is a lawyer, somebody makes car. How do we conduct trade between us? You know, let's say I do haircuts, but I want a kilo of meat. How many times I need to do your haircut to get? And he wants actually to buy a car. So does he tell me go do haircut for the Ford and then you want something else? And so money is there like a source of ease, and the judge between different commodities to tell us how much each is worth. Okay, so for our students of finance, usually we have these explanation what the money is, what function. So based on this, what function do you see actually money then performing? What are the functions that you see based on this discussion? Do you get any clear picture what sort of function money does in society when we exchange, when we spend it?
It's a medium of exchange between
medium
people.
Of exchange.
Yeah.
So number one rule, it's a medium of exchange. Okay. So for example, if we go to and it's also unit of account. Okay. So if we go, for example, to the story about the stone, would that fulfill the function of the money? Is it a medium of exchange?
Yes, it could be.
It could be.
could be.
Okay. However, it fails in some other functions. For example, it's not unit of account.
Yes.
Yeah.
We cannot express kilo of oranges based on this stone. Okay, we can use it in one sense, but it's not fully money because it doesn't fulfill other points, which is units of account. However, in gold and silver, we can have that. We can express it in terms of gold or silver, any other commodity. So we see, for example, if we compare Islamic dinar with this stone, we see dinar fulfills this function in a better way. Okay, so for pricing of the goods and the source of fees, we say this is a medium of exchange and unit of account. Of course, there is other functions money does. Any other function? So it is helping us buy and sell, judge commodities, so we know how much commodities are worth.
It also has a value to itself.
it has a value.
Yeah.
So what we saw this, it is also a measure of value then.
Measure.
So what does that mean? How does that mean measure of value?
That
Because
Can buy something with the money.
Right. You can buy something, and it is, as we say today, there is certain trust associated with the money, specifically when we go to these precious commodities.
yes,
yeah, like how much of this equals how much of this,
Yeah.
basically, right?
Yeah. So that is also third one. It also measure and store this value. So, for example, why is this important that this also be something that stores the value? Is it important to have
yes.
something that keeps the value?
It
Yes.
is
Yeah.
important because, like you said in the beginning, it would be difficult if I cut hair and he sells car. How are we going to
Exchange.
exchange?
And let's say you work for a month
Yeah.
and somebody pays you. You want to have it like a bottle, you know, where all of your work is kept.
Skip.
Yes.
It's like storing that value. Value of your work is stored.
Yes.
So let's say I can buy something now for that work. I want to keep it to buy tomorrow and month after the same thing.
Yes.
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 So inshallah, after the short break, we'll come back to discuss this in more details.
Oh Lord, to you I pray, bow down, prostrate.
Life is a journey,
The only one worthy of praise.
beginning with a single step.
You with an attentive heart.
The direction is clear.
From the present and past, to you I pray, bow down, prostrate.
But it still needs guidance.
One worthy of praise. I stand before you with an attentive heart. Erase my sins from the present and past.
Huda GPS.
Oh Lord, to you I pray, bow down, prostrate.
Welcome back. In this part, we are talking about function of money. So just before the break, we were discussing one of the key features of money beside being a medium of exchange, a unit of account, is also its store of value. So if you work for a month and let's say you can buy a car for that amount of money that you earn, you want to be able to keep that
Storage.
stored somewhere. So maybe in 2 years, whenever you want to buy again the same car, you can do that same.
Yes.
Exactly.
Now, is that possible with today's dollar? What do you think? Today money.
No, because there's always inflation involved with it. So
And what is inflation? What did we say is inflation?
it's something that's actually not there, and you're
Mhm.
actually decreasing the value by increasing it.
Mhm.
You know.
Increasing supply of money,
Decreasing supply.
which is not linked to anything real.
Yeah.
Therefore, you are polluting the value.
The value
Yes.
of what was.
Yeah, so what you originally have.
Yes.
All right? Now, what happens then if you today have $100 in your pocket with inflation? And let's say you can buy, like they say, I don't know, maybe you can buy, let's say you have $1,000, and today you can buy maybe computer, laptop.
Yeah.
Okay? What will happen with that money in 2 years' time? Will you be able to buy the same laptop?
No.
No.
Maybe you can buy half of the laptop
Half of the
tomorrow
laptop.
Yeah.
in
Yes.
few, and then maybe in 5 years, maybe you can buy a mouse.
Yeah.
You know, so in reality, what's happening?
It's decreasing.
Increasing.
Is
Reducing.
it means the inflation is kind of riba in?
Inflation kind of riba. You could look at at that as a way of taking your money from you. So like riba sort of increase and also can be in a matter of decreasing. Here what you are doing, you are manipulating the value. Okay, so you are manipulating the value. And if I had $100 and you start pumping, you are taking away from my money. We say this something that is in reality, especially when you manipulate, it is something that is unjust. Unjust, okay? Riba, we will see, it's a type of contract when you are exchanging things. Here you are almost taking, you are not exchanging anything to come as a riba, but you are taking away value from my pocket by printing more money. And if you go to history, for example, you probably remember in 1930s we had a huge recession which was called depression because it was so deep. And we have seen hyperinflation. Banks used to print money so much, for example in Germany, where you would today get a salary in a box, full box of money, and by the time you go to buy bread, it's not worth. You need another box to buy bread. It's so expensive. It runs so much. And we have seen that, and that's why, for example, if we're talking about how today, for instance, Europe managed their crisis based on that lesson, you'll see that they don't want to stimulate, they don't want to run their policy according to this principle, where in the US they were, Federal Reserve was pumping the money. Because they live in their time when they didn't stimulate the economy in 90s, 30s, so they saw collapse. In Germany and Europe was opposite. They did it, they saw hyperinflation, so that's why they are very tight. They don't want to have inflation. And they have different schools of thought in the managing the money and response to this crisis. So where does this lead us? This leads us to an important topic. So now, understanding money, understanding the Islamic contracts, what we can buy and sell, like what we did in the previous couple episodes, brings us actually to real work. What we as a Muslims should understand from work ethics, how we should work, what we should do with ourselves. Okay, ethics here is just generic term. You know, it doesn't really mean anything. Ethics. When we say ethics, this is just some norm. It is not something universally accepted word. It comes from the root of your belief, like a culture. It's something will be ethical here and not ethical there. Okay, so this is something that comes from what you believe in. So as Muslims, we have certain norms when it comes to business. So when we talk about work ethics, we talk about a specific attitude and the mindset towards the work. So Prophet ﷺ was narrated, once said that it is better to cut some wood and sell them than ask people to give you. Okay, so if you are somebody who cannot, who is forced to beg and ask people, it is better that you do the most basic type of work rather than go around and ask for people. As we said before, it is because you lose your dignity and honor, we said, by asking. So in this narration we see that clearly that work is something that we emphasize. Sense of independence, using your own knowledge and skills to provide and support yourself. And we said that is a duty, according to majority of fuqaha from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, working up to the level where you can sustain yourself, especially as a man, and those you are legally responsible is a must. Okay, so if you can do even the basic job, you must take that job. Okay, so when we go to the next one, we see that clearly. If you open a book of business transaction, Sahih Bukhari, it is a chapter that comes after fasting. So Kitab al-Buyu, it comes after fast, itikaf. Many, you know, it's lots of hints in these matters from imams, from shuyukh, from the scholars. They give us in these matters. Now, there is very interesting to see the first couple of narrations in this collection. What do they address? So first they come after this fasting section, really to tell us, okay, you fasted, you everything, and how? You have to go work. It is something that is normal part of life. In fact, when we talk about opposite effect. Prophet ﷺ said, those who beg will meet Allah without no piece of flesh on their face. Imagine that. If you ask for people and you can do something about your situation, yet you choose to ask them, you will go on the day of judgment without a face. And this is a huge threat. Losing yourself, your dignity, is something that we don't want to see with Muslims. So if you go, also in another narration, the Prophet ﷺ said that upper hand is better than the lower hand. Upper hand is, what is upper hand? It's hand that is giving.
Always giving.
That is giving. All right? And the lower hand is one?
Taking.
Accepting. So when is it acceptable to take? Is when you really need. You are in a debt, catastrophe. You can't help yourself. Then you are allowed to do that. If you are not, then you are not allowed, and the upper hand is better than the lower hand. Therefore, active lifestyle is encouraged. Now this is, we said, the first narrations in Sahih Bukhari are very interesting. And we know the story of Abdurrahman ibn Auf. He came as a migrant to Medina. What was he offered? You remember this hadith?
Yeah.
Yes.
What was he offered?
A wife and
Half of his wealth.
Okay, so by who? By somebody very rich. Yes?
Yes.
So what would most of people do in this situation?
Accept it immediately.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You know, imagine somebody is a millionaire. He's got $10 million. And you come as a migrant. And he says, here, take my $5 million. Very difficult to resist. Now, if he accepted this money, and we know Abdurrahman, capable, smart, talented, clever, businessman, entrepreneur, leader, all of these qualities. Now, what he wants to be, upper hand or a lower hand?
Upper hand.
What he wants, to work and provide value or accept something?
To work and
Is there a need for him to accept? There is a need. He is a migrant, running away, nothing. He's got nothing. What does he tell us? How does he respond to this offer? First of all, is it halal for him to accept? Yeah, he is giving him as a gift. You can accept, but is that what we as a Muslim want?
No, Islam's attitude is to work with your own hands.
Exactly. Exactly. So what is the question he asked them? What is something he said to them? He said, may Allah bless you and your family and your property. Show me where is the market. Where is the place of business? Okay, you know the continuation of the story, what happened with him?
Yes, and after he became
one of the wealthiest men in
one of the
Arabia.
wealthiest.
Very soon after, the Prophet ﷺ saw some smell coming from him. He said, what is this? He said, I got married. He said, what did you give? You know, I gave as a mahr, you know, the gold. Very rich, very successful.
Yeah.
You know? So why would you put this narration in the beginning of Book of Business Transactions?
To show attitude towards earning, work ethics to show.
And what is that attitude that we are getting the hint? Of course, it's showing us it's permissible to engage in market and buy and sell and that's obvious to everyone. Why put it first?
To show that it's better for you to work on your own, and you know.
Attitude that we want to see from you. You are alive.
Yes.
You want to take your responsibility and discharge and do what you can. You don't want dependency attitude. So if you want to study this book of business transaction, you better be like this. Because if you want to be lower hand and develop dependency mentality, others to take care of your responsibility, don't study this. And that's what we say to the people who are watching. If you don't have Abdurrahman ibn Auf in you, don't study. This is not a program for you. This is for leaders, entrepreneurs who want to be upper hand in society, who have high aspirations. You want to be Khalifa on the earth, you want to do all these things, you want to manage the affairs of the world, then you better have this attitude before we can learn the rules. But if you don't have that attitude, Islamic finance is not for dead people, it's for people who are alive. And in fact, narration after that talk about Abu Huraira. They came to Abu Huraira, they asked him, how come you narrate so many hadiths, you know, like what's going on? And he used to explain, you know, I was like a young man around the Prophet ﷺ, and I would retain this knowledge, you know. He was like a student, you know, not having all of this responsibility, young man, you know, and he had the time. As you know, he narrated so much more than other people, just because he was always there. However, what is interesting, he is describing everyday life of the other companions in Medina. And what he said is, my immigrant brothers were busy trading in the market, and my Ansar brothers were busy with their property. So why would this narration be, again, in the top in Sahih Bukhari? What is it telling us?
It's telling us the companions of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that they broke out and they also transacted and added attitude towards earning and being the upper hand.
They work hard to gain the money.
Mm-hmm. So we see, if you take away issue of memory, because you know sometimes in narration you have few issues you can look at. Why this particular one in the top is because if you take away memory issue and all of these things, this describing everyday life when the best man on earth was alive amongst them. What are they doing? Are they sitting next to him and just sitting and doing nothing, or they are busy with their life? As Umar used to one day work and study next and rotate these things. So we see that they were busy with the life. We are not like secularists who just go and let's just worship or just do something. We do the things. Islam came here to affect the way we deal with everything. So this is showing us the lifestyle Muslims should have. And this is why it is important to have that understanding what we want before we go and apply these rules in our life. But of course we should not miss one very important point, and this is the right balance. You see, all of these people didn't do these things because they were craving for a wealth and status. You see, if somebody understands that this is what they thought and this is why they did it, they misunderstand. So if you see, we want right balance where this wealth does not divert you from your duties. Okay? And if we read numerous texts, we will understand, in fact, that even after Jummah, you are allowed to work. It's not like a day where we have like other religions, a day of rest. No, even after Jummah, you can work. You should engage yourself. So we don't have these holidays or something like that. You know, we are people who have a right balance. Now, where is this balance? So we said about the priority of working, okay, and we talk about not being distracted by the worldly matters, okay, where this balance manifests itself. Look at this narration, what it said here. Can you read to me?
Yeah. The Prophet ﷺ said, 2 hungry wolves let loose among sheep are no more harmful to them than a man's craving after wealth and status is to his religion, mentioned by Tirmidhi.
What does this mean? What does this mean? What is this narration telling us? That 2 wolves who are hungry, imagine 2 wolves that are hungry amongst the sheep. What they're going to do today? They're going to massacre these sheep. However, this is less dangerous for you than if you are craving for the wealth and status for your deen. Inshallah, after the break, we are going to continue with the next segment and explain this in more details.
This is our duty. This is something that we need to do. With whatever language that we know, we need to understand the Quran. We need to get to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, so that we will be steadfast on the deen of Islam. That's why the forgiveness is mentioned in so many verses in the Quran, in so many different ways and means, by the mercy of Allah, that the person would gain such a great level, and that is to be forgiven. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him speak clearly, miraculously in front of everyone, to defend the honor and the dignity of Maryam, the mother of Jesus, the best of all women. And the truth is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one worthy of worship, and He's the creator of the heavens and earth.
Welcome back. We are discussing about some of the Muslims' attitude and Islamic perspective on wealth and status and related matters. So just before the break, we were discussing about narration where Prophet ﷺ said that 2 hungry wolves let loose among the sheep are less damaging than someone who is craving, wants money, to earn money, want to have position, status. Okay? So this craving for wealth and money damage your religion, your deen, more than a damage these wolves can do. Hungry wolves, not 1, 2 to the sheep, defenseless sheep. Why is that? Why is that more dangerous?
Because greed can always, you know, it just increases, you know.
Greed just increases. How does it just increase?
Because it increases when a person has love for this worldly life, and he just wants to accumulate, and without worrying that how he accumulates.
So in effect, we could say that these hungry wolves, they will get full after a while. How many sheep they can eat? 1 each, 2 each, okay. Eventually they will stop. Halas, full, no more. And they will eat normally up to the level where they satisfied. Now I'm happy. Then I go sleep. Tomorrow I come. So there will be some limit. But the man who craves, wants this, drives this, never stops, never satisfied. He goes and pursue it and fight it, cheats, lies, whatever, until he gets it. And he will never be satisfied what he gets. So that's why he will compromise, do things, and this will lead him to the destruction. So when we're talking about being busy, working, upper hand, we are not talking for the sake of craving and doing things, but you have some other higher objectives, what you are trying to do, what you're trying to fulfill, but you are not craving, you're not doing it for the sake of it. You're trying to be upper hand. Why? Because you're Muslim, you want to do something in society, be helpful, and we understand that profit in reality and doing good things is something that is a reflection of the benefits you are giving into society. Because in reality is that these people who are willing then to compromise, you know, their religion and they don't care. What happens with them at the end? They destroy even those around themselves. So with regards to the greed, the Prophet ﷺ warned, beware of greed. Indeed, greed destroys those who came before you. It commanded them to be miserly, so they were miserly. It commanded them to break the family ties, so they broke family ties. And it commanded them to commit evil, so they committed evil. So this is what this greed for these things drives a person to huge problems. And this is what we see, for example, now in financial markets. Combine the greeds in a system that doesn't have any prohibition, no brakes. This is a system, you have a strong car, but no steering wheel, no brakes. And you just driving. So when you have a crash, then they say, okay, how does this happen? You know. So we say Islam is the way of life, does not just look at the walls of the mosque. And we have seen the similar story, and we talk about the people of Shu'aib when they were comparing, and they said, how does your prayer command us to do whatever we want with our wealth? You know, and we saw that people generally tend to say, please separate your Islam from our business. You know, where we make money and do business is our job. Don't give us these Islamic rules, how we make money, what we do with money. We want to be independent. So this is not right attitude. Okay, and therefore we saw, for example, the Umar used to manage these markets to make sure that people know these rules and understand things before they, and he used to say, whoever does not have understanding of rules of Islam should not deal in our markets. So why are we recording this episode? Why are we talking about Islamic finance? In fact, if you don't know fiqh of finance, muamalat, these sorts of things, how to handle transactions, if you are now, go back in time, if you are there with the early Muslims, you would not be able to buy and sell. Why did he say that? Because eventually, if you don't understand these rules, you will be engaged in prohibited transactions. Now, today, when you look at the world, especially what is going on with the banks, people see more and more this greed, this craving for money and wealth is destroying, and we see that in the conventional banks. For example, just last year, we see in the news, for example, there was a Standard Charter bank accused of laundering $250 billion. $250 billion laundering. Barclay was fined almost $500 million for manipulating this LIBOR, which is a benchmark. They would each day come together and they would fix the rate. And you remember, LIBOR is benchmark for these 800 trillions. So any small movement, it is very, very lucrative for these traders. So some other banks are also on chopping block, you know, to be fined. Then you have HSBC laundering money for many, many different things. They were also JP Morgan. They were involved in some transaction. This guy called Whale lost billions of dollars in speculative deals. And more you see these people. Every day we have new example of these speculative transactions where people risk so much in hope that they get something that they destroy people around themselves. Swiss banks were also charged for evading tax evasions. We said before, Goldman Sachs selling these CDOs were also fined. So we see all of these things. Now what we want to ask, one question is, do we understand these rules of finance? Do we understand what is going on to be able to apply these? So before we go into next section about riba and prohibition, let me give you one example. Okay, here's the, and this is example, by the way, I find that one of the students of late Sheikh bin Baz, he asked him this in an audio lecture, and he asked Sheikh this scenario, and if this is okay or not. So this is a story where we have a person who has $50. Okay? All right? So we have somebody run the maybe shop or taxi driver or somebody. He's got now $50 notes. He goes to the bank and he wants to change it for 5 $10 notes. Okay? Okay? So he wants this money to exchange because he runs a shop. He needs to give a change. Now he goes to the bank and banker says, look, I only have 2. I can give you 2 today and you come, I'll give you the rest tomorrow. Leave it with me as a loan. Is this, what do you think? Is this Islamically
No,
acceptable transaction or not?
no, acceptable.
Hmm?
No.
What do you think? What's your thinking?
If he agrees and maybe if they work out a contract or something,
Right? So you think if he agrees, it could be acceptable.
it could be acceptable.
Okay, what do you say?
No, because the cost of inflation now and on this day.
Let's forget inflation. Let's say there is no inflation, we live in perfect world and birds are singing and it's beautiful outside. Still, would that be okay or not?
I think it would be.
Yeah? All right. So this is interesting transaction. You see, we have to always know clearly these things. Where does the riba apply? Okay, as you will see, there is a problems with these transactions. Okay, we mentioned before a simple rule, and that is like for like, equal for equal, hand to hand. This is a rule. Like for like, tick. It's like for like, dollar for dollar. Equal for equal. 50 is equal to 50. 50 is 50. But is it hand to hand?
No, it's not.
It's not. So this is delayed. So you will see in reality, this is creating some delay here, which we have a name, technical name for this. This is what is being increased here. Time, or there is a delay. This is what we call riba and nasiya. You'll see how does that riba work in this case. All right? So not only you return more, but there is some other issues when we are exchanging the money. And inshallah, we are going now to discuss these things in next couple of episodes. So this was just a brief introduction to what we call prohibitions in Islam. Okay? So let's see. We know, we said before, muamalat refers to how we deal with people, interact. And the general rule is that things are considered lawful except what is prohibited. Let's see some of these prohibitions. Okay. In the language, when we say riba, this is by the way one of the big topic. When we say riba, what we mean by language? Riba?
An increase.
Increase. Okay. So there is some sort of indication that in Sharia, when we say riba, it has a bit more deeper meaning, which you can see here, and that refers to unlawful increase. So that means also there could be some increase that is lawful, yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
So there could be two types of increase, which is lawful and unlawful. However, when we go to English translation, okay, usually we translate this with two words. One is interest, so riba. Riba in English is sometimes translated as interest, and sometimes as what?
Usury.
Okay. All right. Now, what do we know about these words? Interest or usury. What is the right translation of riba in English, for example?
Interest.
Hmm?
Interest.
Interest?
Yes.
Why?
Because when we give money
Yep.
and we get it back
Yep.
with a little increase in the
There is
money.
little increase.
Yes.
Okay. What is usury then?
Usury be something like a bribe, like a,
So, not really. Not really.
it would be something like money that you did not earn.
Well, I see what you say. You associate this word with some bad meaning.
Yes.
And you are not alone, by the way. If you see now, go to the bank, what they're going to advertise? If they say 5%, what? What they're going to say? How they're going to call this 5%?
5% interest.
Interest. Okay? Have you ever seen bank advertise 5% usury rates?
No.
No.
So they're purposely choosing a specific word. Why is that?
To manipulate the meaning.
Okay, so what is it, the meaning that they are manipulating? When you say to the Christian or common person on the street, when you say interest or usury, what is the difference in the feeling they have?
So interest is almost as if a feeling is their money is increasing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, everybody is interested in their interest. It's a nice word, you know? There's nothing wrong with this word. In fact, if you see how we are manipulated, this is who manipulated our great-great-great-grandfather with changing some words and telling him something that is not. Iblis, Shaitan, he used to manipulate the words. If you just do this, you will be like this and that. This is like insurance policy he sold. If you just do this, you'll be like angels, immortal, all of these things. So he was telling him something, giving the meaning that is not real meaning.
Yes.
He was changing the words and what is the meaning. So here we have similar situation where even in Christianity where riba was prohibited, they actually put certain tricks how to make it halal for themselves. So inshallah, in the next episode, we will continue our discussion on the riba and other prohibition. Assalamu alaikum.